Could we get an MK Dons prediction from you too?
Ooh, it's going to be a tough match. I'm hoping for...
Hello, Bill.
Hi, Ron. How's it going?
I'm doing good. Welcome to the show pod thing that's going on right now. I guess I should state that I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying.
It takes a bit of time. You know, I've only been doing it about a year or so with Dragon Out myself, and the first couple you do are just like, ooh.
Yeah, I'm right in the middle of the so. Wanted to ask you a few questions about the first matchup, August 5th, MK Dons opening up at home. A lot of us international fans don't know too much about League Two and MK Dons. Who are the MK Dons?
So MK Dons are based in Milton Keynes. They were, I don't know the exact word, the exact date, but they were formed sometime in the early 2000s. Essentially, AFC Wimbledon, which a lot of fans may have heard of. They were quite famous, especially in the 90s. Went through some financial troubles in the late 90s, and they were bought by... his name escapes me, but he's not a particularly nice bloke. He bought them out, and then they went through all sorts of problems. Let me just Google his name. They were then bought by somebody else who... I'm just having a quick Google because it's been a long time since I've seen any of these. Look, it's a real new opening for you guys, but it's a massive opening for us as well, because it's been 15 years since we were in League Two, and recatching it with a lot of these teams is it's going to be fun as much as anything else. So Pete Winkleman bought MK Dons, bought Wimbledon, and decided that he wanted to move Wimbledon in 2004 to Milton Keynes. So Milton Keynes is a city just outside London, probably about an hour away. It's a new city, so it's kind of like a lot of people call the city artificial. It's from the 60s. It was a big, vast area where there was nothing, and it became sort of like almost like an overspill sort of area for London. It's like between London and Birmingham, which are the two biggest cities in England, and it's kind of like this overspill area where there's a lot of business and industrial estates and all that sort of stuff is there. And it's got quite a big population because obviously people have moved for work, but they didn't have a football team. Well, they had a football team, MK Dons, Milton Keynes City, but they were really small, didn't have much going on. So Pete Winkleman saw the opportunity to take a team that were a famous team and do what America has in that, having that franchise model. So taking them from one area, bringing them to a new area. Now that, although there's been teams that historically have moved, that move tends to be from one ground in the city or town to another area in the city or town. You're not changing much other than they may have, fans might have to travel 2 miles away instead of 1 mile away from the town centre. Clubs moving in the UK just does not happen. So when this happened, it was hugely controversial. There was a lot of worry that the English system was going to become part of that becoming more Americanized, and you can imagine a big team like Manchester United. If the precedent's set for a smaller team to move, why not move Manchester United to London or move Chelsea to Manchester or whatever? So that was a huge worry. The FA weirdly allowed this to happen, but straight after the ruling that the relocation was going to be allowed, they actually banned clubs from doing it. So it was like they allowed that move to happen because legally they couldn't stop it, but then straight after it happened, they put a rule in place, or a law, whichever it was, to say clubs cannot move out within X amount of miles from their city. They destroyed Wimbledon and created a new club. And just to add a little bit of insult to injury, they kept the nickname the Dons, which was Wimbledon's nickname, hence MK Dons. They're like trying to sort of hold on to that Wimbledon name and legacy. For years, they kept Wimbledon's official sort of honours history. So they listed all the trophies that Wimbledon had won in the past as being their own, even though they'd rebranded the name of the club. They changed the colour of the kit. They became effectively a whole new club in a new area, in a new stadium. It's probably fair to say that they're the most hated club in the whole of the English system.
Wow.
People don't like, say, Manchester United for sporting reasons. Some people don't like Liverpool, Man City, but that hatred towards MK Dons is because it almost feels like they most fans don't think they should exist. I'm in the same boat, although, enough time has passed now that maybe it's a little bit softer. Maybe we're going to have a generation of kids who don't really know any different, who might not feel the same way because they've, 2004, my stepdaughter was born in 2006 and she's nearly 17. So, there's going to be kids that have been going to football their entire lives that won't know any different. Luckily, in a way, Wimbledon reformed as a club, and they are now in our league as well. They made their way through the leagues from I think they started 3 or 4 leagues below the Vanarama National League and eventually worked their way up. They've played each other a couple of times now. Wimbledon fans don't like to call it a rivalry because they don't even want to acknowledge that MK Dons exist. A lot of Wimbledon fans will refuse to go to the MK Stadium or even the home matches against them because they want it to be sort of seen as, no, we're not even giving them any recognition. They're a real club. But that sort of, you'll see in the media when them two teams play each other, that narrative of there being a rivalry will be there because, especially British media, they like to hype these kind of things up, don't they? So that's MK Dons in a nutshell. I'm sure there's people out there who know more about football than me will say that I'm sort of like butchering that explanation a little bit, but they're a really, really controversial club and, will probably be the second most hated club in this league. And then maybe if we go up to League One and they don't come up with us, we'll be the most hated club in League One. But that's looking ahead to the future. Yeah, nobody likes Milton Keynes.
Well, and that was the follow-up question, right? Is that there's so much hate just spewing each time Wrexham's mentioned, BBC Sports or BT Sports, or somebody does an article or features them on, then it just spills down like the comment section, or you see retweets or stuff on social media where it's like, enough, Wrexham again, we get it. You're talking about, do you think that is MK Dons hated more than Wrexham, like this point in time in history?
I think amongst the English in the English system, football fans within the English system, the opinion on Wrexham's relatively split. It's just that, the haters, as people say, will always shout the loudest, won't they? It'll be that minority of people that are just like bitter and jealous towards what's going on at Wrexham. Yeah, you ask a fan let's say, I don't know, just picking a random team, Grimsby, there will be a lot of Grimsby fans that are like, good on Wrexham. They've had their problems in the past. Now they're just getting a bit of success. The media attention's a bit annoying, but whatever. Whereas I think MK Dons are just fundamentally disliked to the core because of what they stood for and that potential that there would have been for clubs to start moving and going to different places. It's a weird one because if you're from Milton Keynes and a football club moves into your area in League Two or League One, you might pop yourself down there. I can't say I wouldn't if I was in that scenario. They didn't have a club there that was competing at that level. I've not really got a huge problem with people from Milton Keynes going to watch MK Dons. I think it's more the fundamental issues with what they sort of represent and a change in a tradition. So yeah, they're hated in a different way, and I would say it's probably just a little bit more than Wrexham.
One score for Wrexham.
Yeah, yeah.
Are they the ones that are referred to as franchise FC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they've had a few nicknames. McDonald's, because McDonald's being a franchise.
Big franchise.
Yeah. MK franchise and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, they're not very well liked. I mean, coming from your perspective, being an American, how are franchises sort of seen over there? Is that something that it is, is it just sort of accepted, or do people not like it, or is it, I don't really know how your average person feels about franchise system.
It's mixed, right? You're going to have the full spectrum of people that feel extremely one direction, which would be counter to having a franchise and viewed as like a sellout and people just throwing money and doing a cash grab. And then you have the other spectrum of people that root for the underdog story. And if you don't have a team, you have your second team, which is the underdog story. But there's a lot of brand loyalty. And so and maybe it's just been ingrained to us and sold and marketed to us in a way that we've accepted it. But we've had teams in professional sports move cities frequently. It's almost every year in at least one of the sports, the major sports, a team is moving from one. And what ends up happening is the fans just follow the team, and they keep like the, Oakland Raiders, LA Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders. the Raiders fans are just still Raiders fans. They're not Oakland Raiders fans, LA Raiders, or Las Vegas Raiders fans. They're Raiders fans. And so that same type of fan, if you've ever seen those games, you've got the people decked out in paints and shoulder pads and look like, gladiators and 300 extras or something like that. Those people travel. They'll travel to the home games now in Las Vegas and be that home support and home crowd. And that might just be part of what that kind of sour taste in Europe's mind when they think of American sports is. It's kind of could be viewed as fair weather fans and bandwagon fans and easily jump on a franchise. You've got the big teams that you follow basketball. You've got Lakers, Celtics, and Lakers, originally from Minneapolis.
Oh, right.
So
hence Lakers, then that would make more sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Minnesota, Minnesota, I think in the native Lakota language, or the language is like land of lake. And so that's why it's called the land of lakes. And so the Lakers, now in LA, not that you'll have very many fans from that era. I don't know if it was the 50s when it moved or something, or the 60s. If the Lakers were to move tomorrow to another city, you'd have LA fans that were pissed off and upset, but they'd still watch the games. They'd still be fans. They wouldn't drop the team because it left the town. We've also been, programmed. We've been accustomed to that. That's normal for us. It's not abnormal.
Yeah, I think football in the UK and I suppose in Europe and other countries, a lot of these clubs were formed by workers from factories or sort of local communities. I mean, Wrexham's first game was a team that were put together to play against the fire service at the time. So it was like I can't remember whether it was the Wrexham Fire Service or North Wales or whatever they were called, but it was, a bunch of firemen playing against the local Wrexham team that was sort of assembled to have like a friendly match, and it took off from there. Quite often as well, it would usually be a cricket team that were looking for a game to play during the winter, because cricket's a summer sport, and a lot of cricket clubs would fold because no one would come back next summer. So they set up football teams so that they all sort of stayed in touch through the winter and then would play cricket again in the summer. And I just think that community aspect in the UK particularly, you can't remove it. It's just the fact that these teams were formed by local people, working class local people. It's literally sort of ingrained. They were our teams. Now, I'm not saying those sort of clubs in American sports weren't formed like that, because I don't have the knowledge for it. But maybe if 50, 60, 70 years ago teams had moved, then there would have been a precedent then. There's no internet, there's no way of that passing around. It would have just been that team had moved from one place to another, and we might have been a bit more accepted to it, but it just didn't happen because there was football clubs all over. So you didn't need to move someone from Wrexham to, I don't know, Rill or wherever, because Rill already had a team, and Bangor already have a team, and Llandudno have a team, and Chester have a team. That everywhere in the UK had some sort of football. It's a strange one. I think promotion and relegation means that teams can grow here, can't they? You can naturally get from one position to another. It might take a bit of extra cash in like Wrexham's case, but theoretically you can come from 3 leagues below Wrexham and make your way up. Whereas I suppose if you want to have an NFL team in a different city, you've just got to go and buy a franchise. I mean, there's no way of getting in. Unless you're an expansion team or whatever. I don't really know 100% how it works, but it's
now,
the
USL is putting up a vote, I believe, in August to have promotion relegation within the USL. And so you have the MLS and then the USL, and both of them have 2 different leagues. So there's a USL Champions, and then you have a USL 2. Phoenix Rising, local team here, they play in the Champion League or Championship League. I'm messing it up. They are going to vote, and we'll see how it goes. They might have promotion relegation. It'd be awesome if that also linked into MLS, but MLS is sitting on that same problem of when you have people that own a franchise and are making money off of owning a franchise, what incentive do they have to vote to possibly be getting kicked out of that opportunity?
Yeah, exactly. And it's the reason that there's only 2 up, 2 down from the National League to League Two, because a lot of League Two teams don't want to vote for there being more chances for them to get relegated.
Yeah,
I think it's misguided, don't get me wrong, but sports team owners aren't gonna shoot themselves in the foot, are they? So yeah, if you're David Beckham for Inter Miami and you've just spent a load of money on getting Messi in, you're not going to want to risk getting relegated that season, are you?
Yeah, that would be the best storyline that would have happened. We got Messi and then we got relegated. All right. What about MK Don players? Do you know any of the players?
Can't say I do massively. It's a real funny one with League Two. I feel like I could name most of the squads in the National League, but now we've come up. It's been so long since we've played a lot of these teams. I'm just trying to get their squad up now. So they've got a few. They've got Matt Smith, who's a Welsh player. We've got two Welsh players actually. MJ Williams. I don't know who he is. He looks like, if I should have a quick look at him, he's from Bangor, so that's an hour drive from Wrexham.
Up the coast, right?
Yes, yeah, up the coast. Matt Smith is actually from Redditch, but he must have Welsh relatives, and he's come through the Welsh system. He's actually quite a good player to be playing in League Two. Just looking at other names I might recognise. They've got a couple of Irish players. They can't be too bad if they've just come down from League One. That's what makes this tie really interesting, is that you've got a team that have just been relegated from the league above and a team that have just gotten promoted from the league below. And you'd think maybe that, assuming they haven't lost too many players, MK Dons, that they would be better. But actually, a big thing with football is momentum. And there's obviously a real good feel factor with Wrexham at the moment. And we do have that momentum behind us. And I just think to be playing them for the first game of the season, it's a real opportunity for us to go and do something. We'll see, though. We'll see. Their owner, I think their fans have now started to turn on their owner a little bit. He's not very well liked. And before, I think their fans were quite happy to just sort of let it go to one side because they were doing well. But now I don't think they're as happy. Their player of the season, actually, Jamie Cumming, has just gone back to Chelsea. He was there on loan. He was a keeper. It's never a good sign if your player of the season the year before was a goalkeeper, because that usually means they've had that much to do. And they're the only player that's come out with any sort of credit. I don't think they'll be too displeased if they lose some players and get some new ones in, to be honest. Yeah, strange team. They have signed a player from Bolton. Oh, so that's MJ Williams. Okay, they've just signed him.
Yeah, a couple of days ago or something.
Yeah. He's been playing at Bolton, so they went up last year, so he's probably going to be a decent player. Their manager Graham Alexander has managed a lot of clubs in the lower league, and he was a bit of a sort of like a lower league legend. Played for all sorts of clubs like Burnley, and he'll know the leagues very well. He'll know the system. He'll know what tactically he should be doing. So if they keep spending money, they look like a team that might actually be. They could be a problem. They've also signed Will Grigg, who, if anyone knows their international football, he was the inspiration between the "so-and-so's on fire, your defense is terrified" chant. It was Will Grigg that was the one that kicked that off. Yeah. He used to play for Wigan and is a Northern Ireland player. He was fantastic years ago, but it's been a long time since he scored a lot of goals. I don't know whether he's quite dropped down to League Two level before, so it might be interesting just to see how he does at this level. It wasn't that long ago he was playing in the Championship. So yeah, never played below League One. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. He's 31, so he's not completely past it. He could do really well, or it could just be that he's been on a downward spiral for years, and that'll be it. You never know with football. It's a funny game.
Who do you think has more to lose in the opening game, or more to win?
That's a really good question. Do you know, I think we've actually got more to lose, to be totally honest with you. I don't think in a normal scenario, I don't think the team that comes up would have anything to lose. But I just think that there's so much pressure on us at the moment with the fact that, we're going on an international tour. As you know, Ran, you're gonna be there yourself. There's a lot of media attention on us. We're going to have a target on our head all season. And I think that puts a lot more pressure on us than it does them, because it just means every single game, all eyes are going to be on us. It'll be very similar to last season in the sense that there's going to be pressure for the entire year. So yeah, I think definitely more pressure on us.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like from the current pulse, but it might be, our insulated view of being in the Wrexham world, that it feels like we have more to lose. Because I was listening to their podcast, the MK1, and they were doing a summer preview, kind of the games that they were playing, and they were talking about what matchups could be. This is before the fixtures were released. One thing they said was, if we're away, I hope it's not Wrexham for our opening game. And it's crazy. They didn't expand on why, but that was something they said. They were saying some matchups that they would like or prefer, some closer matchups that aren't too far of a distance. But if the first game was away, the very first team they said was Wrexham, but I believe they also said or not that they wouldn't want to face.
I mean, we both had such good seasons last year. We've got that wave of like I said earlier, the momentum on us, and there's a real feel good factor at us and Notts. They won't want to play us because they've just had a rubbish season, and I bet the atmosphere amongst their fans isn't great, even if they have signed a few decent players. So yeah, we're going to be a team that, from a footballing perspective, a lot of people aren't going to want to play this year, but they're also going to want to beat us. So there's that sort of like there is that pressure there. It surprised me a little bit, actually. I'd have thought they would have wanted to come here to try and put a bit of a stamp of authority on the the league for the season, but I guess I get it as well. The atmosphere is going to be absolutely buzzing for that first game at the Racecourse. It's gonna be unreal because 15 years since we've been in the Football League. It's a crazy time for everyone. My cat's just he's gonna do a Mark Griffiths Laszlo cat impersonation and come and give me a bit of a
get some start time.
I don't know whether you even be able to see him because of all the black that's going on at the moment. But
yeah. I just got 7 years of bad luck, but yeah. No, you could make him out once he came from beyond the background into your view. Yeah. I mean, as with any type of pod or show, the true stars are the animals.
Oh, always, without a doubt. Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to be an animal one day, you too could be a star. Oddly, when they were mentioning the matchups and potentials, there was a short bit later that they talked about Wrexham. They were saying just facing Wrexham in general at the Racecourse is going to be hard. And that if I'm correct in regurgitating the information they said, I think they were saying like maybe Wrexham will only lose another 5 games again. Those might not even be any of them at home. And so they're viewing their outside standpoint, at least from this one podcast that I listened to one time, is viewing, a fortress as the Racecourse is a place that people do not want to come to. They don't want to play there.
That's great. That works to our advantage, really. We want teams to be scared to come. We want their fans to be scared to come. It just plays into our hands. So we've gone from having being everybody's. I'm not really a big lover of this saying, but a lot of people in sort of British football say that this is their cup final. Like they're that the opposition are that small that it's like the biggest game that they're going to play that season. When we were in the National League, we weren't the only team, but imagine you're let's say a Wealdstone fan. I really like Wealdstone as a club, but they've done well to get up into the National League. They won't have played at stadiums as big as ours and Chesterfield and Notts County. So coming to us, it's like for their players that may have been playing 2 or 3 leagues below the year before, it's a big day for them to come to these big stadiums. We're going to have the opposite now. We're going to have, we're going to be going to some of the grounds in the league are going to be bigger than ours. MK Dons is 30,000, and Bradford's is 20-odd thousand as well. So they're not going to be phased to come to us in terms of the size of the stadium and the spectacle of it, but they might be phased by the atmosphere. So I think that will probably play into our hands, really. You know yourself that the noise of that Notts County game last season was incredible, wasn't it, to be fair?
Yes, yeah. It was, I mean, we could just go, my mind's jumping because you're like, Wealdstone. I was like, didn't we get Mindy from Wealdstone? Didn't he score that big goal back against them again? And then you're like, Notts, didn't he score that second goal at Notts? It's, that's like everything's so much more connected on the levels than the surface meets. That player relations, because we got Palmer from AFC Wimbledon, right?
We did,
and that's the old team of the MK Dons.
Yeah.
Oh, do we have any history with MK Dons? We've never played them before, or
no? So I can talk a little bit about that. I think we've only played them once, but I am not 100% on that. I remember going to one game against them. I'm just not sure if we played them another time. So look. Oh, there's been 4 games.
4 games, okay.
Yeah, but I only remember going to the one, which is the only time Wrexham have beaten MK Dons in League 2.
Well, so and of course, you're going to be there, so the good luck charm is back. How long ago was that?
That was 2008, so 15 years ago.
Okay, so pretty soon after they had started up as in Milton Keynes.
Yeah. I can go through the fixture. Should we just crack into it, should we?
Yeah, go for it.
Fixture history with MK Dons. We've only played them 6 times, just looking at a fixture list here. So a couple of those games were just before I started going to watch us play because I kind of got into football a little bit late. I was about 15, 16. Well, maybe not as late as some of the people who are going to be listening, but for someone from Wrexham to be getting into Wrexham, that was kind of late, So they've won 4 of the 6 games. There's been 1 draw and 1 loss. We played them in the season they formed actually in League One, and they beat us 3-0, and then we drew against them. Then they won the next 2 games in League Two, and in the game I do remember going to, the season we got relegated, actually, they went up that year as champions, or if they weren't champions, they definitely went up that year, and we beat them 1-0. First time for Brian Little as manager, who was an ex-Aston Villa and Leicester manager. He'd sort of come down the leagues, and him coming in was supposed to be sort of seen as a really good sort of managerial signing for us. It really didn't work out, hence us going down. But in his first game in charge, he brought a bloke called Danny Sonner in, who was an ex-Birmingham player. He was fantastic. He absolutely ran the game. It was like, great, we've got this midfielder that we've been looking out for. He took corners. Imagine, trying to think, it's not quite on the stature of Ben Foster in the sense that, Foster's got a lot of Premier League pedigree, but for Danny Sonner, considering there was no Hollywood involved then, for him to come down from where he'd been playing to play for Wrexham, he was a cut above that division. Unfortunately, his knees had just got completely almost disintegrated, and he played the 1 game for us before he had to call it a day. I think he got an injury in the game or in training just after, and he'd set up the 1 goal, which was a corner, I think, from memory. So we don't have much of a good history of playing against them, really. It'd be very, very nice to turn that around on the first game of the season, especially considering there's not many people who are big fans of MK Dons in the English football system, well, in the British football system.
You brought up a really, really interesting tidbit of information. So the year that Wrexham got relegated, MK Dons got promoted out of the league.
I am going to just double check it just in case I am getting my facts wrong there, but I am pretty sure they did get promoted that season.
If that's true, how coincidental that they were relegated when we got promoted.
I know, right? Yeah. Yes, they did. Yeah. So I wasn't remembering it wrong. Yeah.
Wow.
So, the trajectories between the 2 clubs couldn't have been further for a long time. And it was, they did come first, just double checking. Yeah, they came first, and they actually won the league trophy, which is we're going to be playing in for the first time in 15 years. Well, it's now called the Papa John's Trophy.
Okay.
So they won that year as well. So they had a fantastic year. We had a not so good year. At that point, so when they first formed, they went down not long after that. Actually, we got relegated. The year we got relegated from League One, which was 2005, I think. They should have gone down that year, but we were the first team to ever have 10 points taken off us for financial reasons. So because we'd gone into administration, people who were watching, who've seen the documentary in the Welcome to Wrexham episode where they talked about Alex Hamilton, who was the big bad guy who tried to sell the club, tried to sell the ground and make it into a supermarket or whatever. We were deducted 10 points, and we were the first team for that to happen to. It's happened to other teams since, but we were the first.
On the season's total of points, just straight 10 points came off of it.
Yeah. So what happens now if there are financial issues for a team, particularly like going into administration, which is, I don't know if administration is a thing in US banking sort of terms, is when you basically you default, you owe massive debts to loads of different companies, and what the government will do, or like a financial regulator will do, is come in and say that the club has to, or the business has to, pay 1 pence in the pound. So if they owe a local business £10,000, they only have to give them £100 for it, just to settle all the debts and wipe the slate clean. If club goes into administration now, they get 10 points taken off them. So even though from a footballing point of view, Wrexham had done nothing wrong, the fans had done nothing wrong, because we had this dodgy owner, we had this 10 points taken off us. We would have actually stayed in League One that season if it wasn't for the 10 points, and MK Dons would have gone down. They did go down the year after that, so that, they only survived the 1 extra season, but they obviously then sort of regrouped and had a really good season a couple of years after that, which was the year that we went down. But it looked like they were going to kick on from there and, sort of start going up the leagues, and they were having a lot of money pumped into them, but it just didn't, for whatever reason. You'd have to ask the MK1 podcast boys a bit more about the history, but they just sort of didn't really, they were trying to do what we're trying to do now and get as far up the leagues as possible, and it just didn't really quite happen for whatever reason. And obviously now sort of fate's brought us back together. They've gotten relegated the year that we've gone up, and it's kind of like meeting them again back in the middle, isn't it?
Man, that is crazy. So entering back into the league, exited at the same time, coming back in, or not to the league, but to League Two, and then coming back into League Two at the same time.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Time. Yeah.
Oh man, that's that even
nice, nice symmetry there, isn't it? To it, really.
It really is. It's like August 5th is right around the corner. it's coming up.
I can't wait.
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do is wait to hear back from the MK1 guys and see, if we have anything hard fast. There's one possibility of a little sneak interview that might get thrown in, but I don't know how much. That was a fast haircut, wardrobe change.
like Superman in a phone booth.
Yeah, I changed the green screen behind me. This is standard San Diego apartment, off-white with bamboo plant, and of course the Mexican Coke with the real sugar Fantas.
What is so? Yeah. I'm potentially teaching you guys a couple of things about Mexican. Right? Okay.
All right. So, Bill, how you doing, man?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Just trying to brush up on my MK Dons. I feel like being the expert in quotation marks in this sort of conversation, like I need to up my game a little bit, but it's going to be something that all year all Wrexham fans are going to have to start really digging into what the opposition teams are like. I've got to admit, Ran, I've got a particular weakness for not really remembering opposition players when I've watched them live, unless they really stand out. So like Jacob Mendy, weirdly, when he played for Boreham Wood a few times, stood out to me. And it was like, when we signed him, it was like, oh, I remember him playing for Boreham Wood. So it always takes me a bit of time to get used to opposition teams. But part of the fun of it, especially when you go up a division, maybe not so much when you go down a division, but when you go up one, it's great sort of learning who all the new players are that you're going to come across.
And that might be weird for us because we're getting used to, okay, season 1 of the documentary, you get to know some of the teams, and then watching the games, you get to know some teams in different ways from hearing the commentary. Some of the facts and details are overlap from opposition teams, and then some of them are new information depending on what media source you're consuming it. And so now we're kind of getting spoiled, where it's like a new shiny toy to open up or gift to open, each season. So next season, it's like, what's the new teams?
I mean, if we go up again, I mean, there's depending on how much people from abroad, like pay attention to football in general. In League One, there are some historically quite big teams. There's teams like Derby County, trying to think about Portsmouth, some other teams who've been in the Premier League in the last 20 years. But this is probably the last division where there's not going to be names that people might recognise. So as we go, if we go up and keep going, there'll be more and more teams that people might sort of understand. But this really is probably the last one that, if you don't really pay attention to lower league football, will have teams that you don't know any of them. So it's just going to be fun. I just hope we don't go and get battered from place to place, because last time we were in League Two, that happened a lot.
You're getting flashbacks and a trauma response.
Yeah, completely.
Break out into a sweat for no reason.
Yeah.
So last we left off, we were talking about some of the players, going over which ones that you had heard from and knew. We didn't, however, get to hear back from MK1 podcast. So I'm going to assume that all the questions were so good that they could not be answered. Until I hear otherwise, that's what I know. Now, one thing I did hear on their podcast, and I saw a post today, is they sold out the allocation for the Wrexham game.
Yeah.
So, but it didn't immediately sell out. It took 3 days or so for them to. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a sign of anything, or there's nothing to read in at all.
I think that's probably that's more normal. 3 days is quite normal. Like what's happening with Wrexham with tickets at the moment is not the norm for this level of football. Doesn't mean that clubs don't sell out, but for it to go, within seconds, sometimes the queues that are huge to get a Wrexham ticket really isn't the norm. But, last year we'd have teams that would only bring, say, 50 away fans, and then we'd end up giving either the bottom or the top tier of that away end to the home fans, which would mean more tickets are available. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of that this year, because a lot of the teams will sell out or sell enough that they can't separate the two tiers. So, yeah, I mean, first game of the season, most teams, unless it's a huge trek, would sell out their away allocation just because everyone's dying to get back to the football. I don't know how well supported MK Dons are as away fans, but they get a fair few for their home games. So I think 1,000 odd is about par, really.
Yeah, that was another question that I'd like to know is, how do their away fans travel? Like, is there a group amongst them? Is there, a tradition that they've started since mid 2000s?
It's honestly, it's not a club that I know a lot about, because I purposely choose not to find out much about them just because they're that disliked. I think, let me just have a quick look at what their average attendance is, and bear in mind that whatever the figures is for last year, they had a poor season, so it's always going to be a little bit lower. But their average home league attendance was 8,460. Their lowest home attendance last year was 5,500 in the league. They only sold 600 tickets for a cup game, but that's quite it's fairly normal actually for this level, just because people don't bother going to cup games. It's just there is Wrexham fever at the moment, and everyone just wants to go. So we are a bit of an exception to the norm. Their highest home attendance last year was against Ipswich Town, and they had 14,000 there. So they must sort of drift between, that's quite a big swing, isn't it? 5,500 for their lowest to 15,000 for their highest, and that was against Ipswich Town, who were a big club. They've gone up. They could have actually packed the away end out. So yeah, it's a tough one to say, but I can't actually find any. It's a little bit harder to get statistics on how many away fans go, just because it depends whether the clubs release that details. So I don't really know, but like I say, their figures for last year would have been low anyway, just because of whenever a team's struggling, they tend to get lower attendances anyway.
Do they adjust the attendance for the away allocation based on the opponent, or is it the same set amount for every game during the season?
It differs from club to club. I think there's a when you get to the Football League, there is a minimum percentage that you have to offer the away team. So I think it's 10% of your capacity has to be offered to the away fans. If they don't take up that allocation, then I think you're allowed to sell it, but it has to be offered to them. And then obviously that then differs from club to club. A club like ours, when we're selling out as many tickets as we can sell every week, are going to offer the minimum. A club like MK Dons that have a 30,000 seat stadium and clearly from those average attendance figures don't sell out 30,000, might just say, there you go, have X, 5,000 seats for Wrexham fans. We know you're going to buy it, so you take as many as you want in that away end.
And just make the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You may as well. I don't like MK Dons as a club, but you may as well. Have I told you I don't like MK Dons? Have I made that clear? Something
that was actually a question I had. Bill, do you like MK Dons?
No.
Do you have any idea on starting 11 that we might see for MK Dons?
Not a clue. The only sort of hint that I've got is, depending on when this episode goes out, I don't know whether they will have had another game since then, but their last pre-season friendly that they'd played was on Friday, and they started with McGillivray, Norman, O'Hara, try-list. I'll come back to that. Harvey, Gilby, Williams, Robson, Lecco, Isa, who was their top scorer last year, and Burns. Now, friendlies, I mean, they are just for minutes in the legs. You'll have seen that in the games against Chelsea and then against LA Galaxy's second team, we fielded nearly completely different. There was about 4 or 5 changes. And I'm sure the team that played against Man United will be quite a different squad. And then at halftime and halfway through the second half, we've made a lot of substitutions, and I'm sure MK Dons will have done something similar. So a lot of this is more about fitness rather than actually looking to, play your first 11. The accepted sort of tradition, and if you listen to Ben Foster's podcast, he was talking about this the other week with whoever the guest was on the show then, that the last pre-season game is usually, not always, but usually going to be the starting 11 of the first home match. So whoever we play against Philadelphia on on the weekend, that's most likely going to be our starting 11. For me, I can only really see Foster in goal. I can't see any of the other players being, unless there's a fitness issue. Then you're looking at Mendy and Barnett on left and right wing back. Tozer, I think, is definitely going to start. And then it's the other two centre backs that I'm not sure about. My gut instinct would be Hayden and O'Connell, purely because Phil Parkinson in the past has been quite keen to let players sort of have some time to bed into the squad. The only thing that's a bit of a question mark over Hayden is that he was injured. He's only just coming back to fitness. Can he play 90 minutes of a first team game that isn't just pre-season? So Hayden, I'm not 100% sure about. We could see Boyle in that position, but I definitely think Tozer and O'Connell are the other two. Midfield's a complete mystery because there's so many quality players, but if I was at the guns to my head, it would be Lee, O'Connor and Cannon, and then Mullen and Palmer up front would be what I'd guess. But you could choose Dalby instead of Palmer. He's just as good as Palmer, so that could be what we see there. Back to the try list thing though, before I forget.
Yeah.
You won't see it with us much now because we've got the money to just go out and buy players. But generally, if a team is looking at somebody who's a free agent, they'll bring them in to play in a friendly, and they'll often most of the time, they will put try list on the team sheet that goes out on social media so that other clubs don't know that player's available. I mean, obviously now in the social media age, it will get round really quickly. There'll be photos. Fans will be like, oh yeah. MK Dons fans will be like, oh, that's the try list. It's such and such. He used to play for Charlton or whoever. But it kind of comes from when reports would be in the newspaper and they wouldn't want scouts from other teams picking up a paper from different local areas to go, oh yeah, look, he played for Wrexham today. That means he's available. Let's go and pinch him off Wrexham before they sign him up. I don't know whether it's tradition or whether it's like a contractual thing, but they tend to put try list in the team sheet, which, shows to me that MK Dons haven't really got a settled first 11 yet, and they're still looking at players.
I heard MK1 pod saying that their midfield is where they are hoping to sign somebody else this summer. And so don't know if that trialist is a midfielder. Not. Did they list the position or?
No, they've listed it in what looks like order, which would put them as a centre back if I'm reading this correctly. But sometimes they don't always put the correct order. Sometimes they'll just put the team sheets in like number order or in other ways. So it's difficult to say, but
unless there's somebody, their name is Trialist Harvey. I mean, unless Trialist is their first name or something.
Oh yeah, or Johnny.
We've
Trialist.
misread. We've misread this whole thing.
That'd be an unfortunate surname for a footballer, wouldn't it? Trialist.
Every roster that he's on, every lineup.
Well, it'll even be if you look at some old match reports that like Mark's done or whatever, that there will be years where we'll have Trilist A, Trilist B, Trilist C, Trilist D in the squad in some form or another. In some of those bad years where we've had to just completely rip up the team sheet at the end of the year and get a load of new players in. So, you're not always onto a good thing if you see that many Trilists in your squad.
So them only having one Trilist, that's a good sign for MK Dons. Or it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a worrying sign for them. I'd say they've probably got the money to keep hold of most of the players that they came down with. It's just whether they actually want to keep most of the players that they came down with because they got them relegated. So
and that might be sell a couple of big, free up some money and rebuild.
Quite often players as well will have a relegation clause. So if they if they're relegated from their team, the team has to allow them to leave if an offer comes in for them, or the players' wages will be cut to match the league that they've gone down into. And who wants to see their wages cut, regardless of whether you're a fairly well paid footballer, you still don't want to lose 20% of your wages, do you? So they tend to try and get a move if that's the case.
When did you catch the last game, the LA Galaxy?
I didn't. I was at a wedding on the day, and there was no way I was staying up that day. I'd had a few too many beverages, and I was asleep by 12 o'clock, if not earlier. I've caught the highlights though. It was some good goals. Pre-season's a funny one, I've seen Wrexham beat teams like Stoke and City in pre-season, and then gone on to have an awful season. And then there's also pre-seasons with the 92-93 season. It's a little bit before my time, but like quite famously, we had a really bad pre-season and a really bad start to the year. And then it just all turned around and we ended up getting promoted that year. So it's obviously it's great for you guys to be able to see some games. And I am very jealous of everyone who's out there, especially the people who've come from Wrexham to go to America. But from a purely footballing point of view, it's like it's not really the results that matter. It's kind of just getting fitness in the legs really for them.
Yeah, I was wondering if like formation, Parkinson's going to keep like 3-5-2 or what?
Yeah, I can't. I think the fact that we've gone and bought a new set, we've got 6 centre backs at the club now, means that he's got 3 main players in mind and 3 backup. I can't see us changing from that. But in his first year, he did play 4-2-3-1 a couple of times. So I suppose the scope's there. Quite often when we're behind in a game, he'll change to like a more attacking 4-3-3 or something as well, won't he? So I think that's in our locker, but it's more of a plan B and a plan C rather than him changing the setup we've got. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Yeah. And if there's somebody out there that's watching this and they're, on the formation with the numbers, like where does the 3 start at to the 5? Right. Yeah. 2? So the keeper's never included in the formation because obviously it's just assumed there's always going to be one keeper because you can't play 2 keepers. So there's always one keeper. And then the first number is how many there are in defence. But it can get a little bit complicated because 5-3-2 and 3-5-2 are quite interchangeable because it's 3 centre-backs and then 2 wing-backs. But some managers will play with the wing-backs. So that's Jacob Mendy and Ryan Barnett and Anthony Ford for Cal McFadden for Wrexham. They can play quite high up the pitch and will be more in the midfield, which is kind of how we play, really. That really sort of high pressing full-back position. Then the next number is the midfield. But again, like I say, in a 3-5-2, it's 3 in the middle and those 2 wingers and then 2 up front. So it just goes from defense, midfield to up top. Yeah. So I'm here in San Diego, obviously, like we had mentioned a second ago. We've got the Man U game tomorrow, and then less than 2 weeks before MK Dons. Yeah. Do you want to be so bold as to do any type of score prediction? Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I'm going to put this out there before I get clipped and taken the mick out of. There needs to be some context. Like the first game of the season always has potential to be a bit weird. It's the players could come in undercooked. Fitness could be different. I love the club are doing a US tour, but I do worry a little bit just from a purely sporting point of view that they're coming back to the UK quite late before the start of the season. How much the traveling is going to impact the players, I don't know. But having said that, MK Dons are a team that have just come down. They haven't got much momentum behind them. I think we should be okay. I'll go with 2-0 Wrexham. Ooh. Do you want to know who agrees with you? Yourself? This guy. Game prediction, MK Dons. What are we doing? 2-0. 2-0
across the board.
Get in. Let's go.
Yeah.
Up to town.
Take care, you
Thank you.
Thank you. MK Dons score predictions.
I'm gonna go 2-0.
2-0? Yes. All right.
So you got
MK Dons prediction.
You go for a 2-0 win.
2-0. There we go. Get in.
There we go.
Oh, we must be on the same wavelength then. There's something, great minds think alike, don't they?
They might, but then again, someone else had a prediction. MK Dons first game of the season. Game prediction.
A tightly fought contest that hopefully Wrexham come out on top of. I don't get very bullish. I'm not going to do we're going to stuff them 5-0. Yeah. I don't go in for that kind of tough talk. I'm more of I'm cool, calm, and collected. We're going to be fine.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. It'll be a win. 3 points. That's all I want. I don't care how.
You heard it here first.
Could we get an MK Dons prediction from you too?
Ooh, it's going to be a tough match. I'm hoping for 2-1 Wrexham.
Ooh,
Thanks, guys.
Good.
We gotta run.
Fair play.
So I don't know. I don't if they're all on the same page. And keep in mind, while those were asked of the videos that you just saw, you just saw, it's not like we recorded this and then put the videos in second. That would have never happened. But just like the videos you just saw, they didn't hear each other. They just all independently said it 2-0.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how early they'd be doing preparation for the game and whether they've watched much tape of MK Dons or there's something that they don't know. But if they're all sort of singing from the same hymn sheet, it's great to hear that they're confident more than anything. But you never know. There could be something tactically that they've seen that makes them all more confident. I think it's just we don't start the season. We don't tend to concede too many goals unless it's a mad game like against Barnet, the 7-5 game last season. But I think we're quite solid at the back. Phil Parkinson likes to play that sort of football where it's more important to defend first and then the attacking sort of comes later.
How do you feel about that? Because it seems like sometimes we're getting behind on the game because we're not, doing the attack right at the beginning. And, it's a tactic, but couldn't just managers play to that knowing that's what's coming? And
I think when you concentrate more on defense being a priority, it kind of puts more pressure on you, because if you don't produce results, then the fans aren't being entertained. I think the order of like how fans like to watch football is, number one is be entertained and to win. Obviously, like to have that really nice style of football, but also win. But then, underneath that, fans will generally take winning, even if it doesn't look great. As long as you keep winning, they don't mind. And then it goes all the way down to, like if you lose, but you lose in style and it's like 3-2 and it was a good game and everyone was just kind of happy with the way you played, you can kind of get away with it. But then if you're playing defensively and you're losing, the crowd are going to turn on you pretty quick. And I think that's why, for those who watch the documentary, the start of Phil Parkinson's first season in charge, he was clearly trying to build that culture of a strong defensive unit, but it put a lot of pressure on him because we weren't getting some results that we weren't necessarily beaten. We were drawing or losing games that we should have won if we'd have been a bit more attacking. So, I think Phil Parkinson's bought himself a lot of time with last season, but with his style of football, he will have more pressure on him than other managers who maybe play like a more free-flowing attacking game. Having said that, the way we scored some of those goals against LA Galaxy at the weekend, geez, that's like we played some nice football. You've got players like Elliot and Paul Mullen in the side. You don't need to worry about the quality. A lot of people might be a bit concerned that we've not signed anyone yet. I kind of see it as a maybe a positive is a bit of a stretch, but it's not a bad thing, because this team, they've been playing with each other. A lot of the team have been playing with each other for 2 years now, and the majority of the squad have been there for a year and a half. So they're all used to each other. They've got that consistency. They know how each other plays. They've all got the quality to play in League Two as well. So honestly, if we didn't sign anyone between now and the start of the season, I wouldn't be too bothered. We're a strong enough squad.
Yeah.
They clearly know each other. You could just, that one goal, I can't remember whether it was the second or third, but there was a lot of like sort of passing between Elliot Lee and a few of the other players. It was almost telepathic. The way they were sort of spreading the ball around was, really, really good. Let's hope it continues.
And those were the type of plays that last season you're like, oh, so close. It's you see the pieces getting put together and you're like, oh, when this machine's working good, when those passes are, and we got to see some of that.
Definitely,
good. And more so felt like the Chelsea game where Chelsea had those good passes, and you see, like, you leave the opening and you could see the class of the, Premier League players of you leave a small hole and that's all. Just one window of opportunity.
There's just that they've just got that. It's not just the physical speed, but their speed of thought as well. The fact that they can, it's instinctual. Even our good players, you can sometimes see them taking that split second to think and make a decision. But the Premier League, it's just like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like it just all comes so naturally. And that Chelsea team were a development squad, but they had players like Carney Chukwuemeka, who was a £30 million player that they signed from Villa, and Mark Cucurella, who was a 50 or 60 million player that they'd signed from Brighton. So their idea of a development squad is very different from LA Galaxy, for example.
Right.
And of course, a Wrexham second team wouldn't even come close. So Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, good to watch that, dichotomy, that just end of the spectrum where you have one side Chelsea, then you have the reserve team for LA Galaxy, and just seeing, okay, Wrexham at this point in time is not a Premier League team, but they're not the low end of, like, they're not even a reserve team for the MLS. They're obviously above, obviously higher than that.
Yeah.
And they looked more skilled. The LA Galaxy team, they were just fast. All those guys had pace, and but they didn't have that technical, like that clinical skill. So you see the difference of, like, okay, that's a young team that has potential. If they get knowledge and those players get knowledge, you put that speed together with a technical execution, with the knowledge of seeing where to put passes and how to run patterns, that could be a good team. But Wrexham is already at the point where it's like, okay, yeah, they're going to be. I'm excited for the season, because I feel like Wrexham is going to be trouble for everybody, every city that Wrexham goes to and plays. Everybody that comes to the Racecourse. I feel like it's going to be trouble for everyone. It's not going to be a fun day. Anybody playing Wrexham.
Putting on a show everywhere we go, Ran.
Hey. So we have 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0 as the predictions. Of course, I'm going to piggyback on the prediction, and
don't blame me if it doesn't come off.
I'm going to say 2-0, and the only way it will be different is if the players don't do what I told them to do, and that would be to score 2 and make sure none go in. Simple. It's simple. If you just do that, you will win.
It's almost as if we scripted this, Ram, but genuinely, like, I guess was just thin air, wasn't it?
I know. I'm sitting here. I'm like, all right, can you guess what Luke Young's prediction is going to be? But yeah, I'm looking forward to the first matchup. Hopefully, this information will give some of the fans some more information about MK Dons that they didn't know about beforehand. If anybody has any questions that we didn't cover and they'd like to hear another time, put them in the comments down below. Shoot us a message. Bill, where can people get a hold of you?
I am on Twitter at blong1864. I'm on other stuff, but I'm only really active on Twitter, so there's no point in following me on anything else.
If you know what's right for you.
Yeah.
You go on to X marks the spot now or something like that. I don't know, but whatever. Well,
yeah,
thanks.
Of course, yeah. That's mad, isn't it? Elon Musk is he's a character, and that's if we're just going to be nice.
Yeah. I mean, just wait till he buys a football club somewhere. You thought Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney money was stupid. Imagine if Elon Musk buys a team.
But I can't wait until we're playing Bradford XAFC or whatever he'd call them. So.
Pound hashtag money sign. Yeah. Well, Bill, thanks so much for lending your expertise. Looking forward to this season, hearing you on the comms again for that.
Yeah, can't wait.
Hopefully we're correct and we have a celebration video for how right we are. But look forward to all the stuff that we got wrong that I'll list in the description whenever I hear about it and somebody lets me know. I'll correct it. But from San Diego, up the town. And I'll see you soon.
See you later, mate. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, that was sweet.
Yeah.